Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, my very special guest is Jolie Diane. Jolie is one of the hardest working anti-geoengineering activists that I know. What makes her activism so unique is her unrelenting drive and ability to take the issue of the covert spraying program directly to the offices of state and federal lawmakers and challenging the legality of a program that is in clear violation of state and federal laws sworn to protect the people and the environment. In our discussion, Jolie takes us through the outstanding progress that she and her colleagues have made with getting lawmakers on board with the repercussions and environmental issues of the spraying program. My conversation with Jolie was wide-ranging and very informative, and so without further ado, here's Jolie Diane. So Jolie, welcome back to the show. The last time we spoke was back in May of 2016. Do you believe that?
No.
Almost a year ago. Yeah, I mean, we've spoken on Facebook and stuff like that, but the last time you were on the radio show was 9 or 10 months ago. And during that show, you were explaining how you are awakening lawmakers to geoengineering. And so with today's conversation, you and I spoke offline the other day, I asked if you wanted to come back and talk about the progress that you're making and how it's going with this awakening process with the lawmakers. So how is that going? I mean, it's been 10 months later now. Are you seeing any real progress?
Totally. Thank you, Mike. It's great to be back. And yeah, we have made a tremendous amount of progress in terms of really connecting people to what the issue is, which we know is the geoengineering issue and the fact that there's a ban on that in 196 countries, but the United States is not a party to that. And so, you know, in terms of raising the level of awareness, we're definitely making a lot of progress. And, you know, we're in almost a dozen states.
Okay, so there's a dozen states that you think are, I don't want to say they're on board, but they're at least in the listening stages?
Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe even more. What I mean by that is that we have activists on the ground that are engaged in the process of getting the ban implemented in our state. And the reason we have to do that at the state level, because when I initially started this, Mike, I thought, okay, it's the feds. We got to go to the feds. This is a federal issue. And what I learned was that the country has been regionalized. And so when you call up and you go, I got pollution in my state, they say, okay, hang on a second. Oh, you're in region 3, 5, whatever. We'll get back to you. So they take a number. And so there's no accountability in your state. So that's what our ban is about. It's bringing that accountability and also nailing Agenda 21 to the wall, because that's how they regionalized us. And it's been over a process of decades, but it's been slow. And again, through the generations, if we don't know the story and the history of it, then we're just getting steamrolled. And that's what's happening now, because Carnegie and Bill Gates are steamrolling this. They started something called the C2G2. And it's a new program that they have. It's an initiative, climate geoengineering governance. And so here's somebody at the international level that's getting ready to steamroll us. I mean, they've been doing it. You look out at the sky, they're doing it. Yeah. China's doing it. You know, very, very big parties to the UN. And so that's what we're looking at with our bans, is this is a mechanism. This is a tool not only to nail geoengineering to the wall, but also the Agenda 21, because that will create a place for us to give input at the local and state level and get us back into our constitutional ground, the law of the land, where there's some accountability by our elected civil servants. It's not this business of, oh, we're going to tell you to do this and that and everything else. And what a mess.
Well, that's interesting now. So when you went to the federal level, they would talk to you in terms of regions at the federal level?
The federal level at the Congress, they talked about it as if it didn't exist. They pretended like, oh, except for the Maryland office. And they suggested, you know what, let's go try to go to your state with this. And so, yeah, it was a process to find out what to do. And then, of course, having a legally drafted document in California and Maryland, then now when we go in the door, it's a different story. It's like, because this is how your lobbyists do it. They bring in a bill, and this is what they want, usually a fat stack of cash, and then that's how a bill gets made. I mean, and that's where if the American people show up, we can have tremendous success in changing some of these things. I think it's a misconception to think that the president is going to do anything. It's a question of having the energy and the will behind it. So many good people, you can see that. They're just coming out of everywhere. And they're like, but there's no direction. There's nothing. Like, what do we do? Oh, let's go protest Trump. It's part of the problem. But again, we're missing this in the context of the larger shift of power from the United States to the UN. And they're showing us the show of like, okay, new President Trump, and Trump is like, yeah, we're getting out of the UN, and I don't believe in climate change. I don't think there's anything wrong here, but the direction and the intent is so important.
Well, just going back to the regionalization for a second and the regions, the reason why that's piqued my interest is because that's something that's been spoken about from a New World Order, Agenda 21 schematic for a very, very long time. And I believe a lot of people believe that hasn't happened, that that's something that's going to take place in the future. And you're saying, wrongo, it's in place today. Yeah.
That's done. And the way we know that, and Deborah Tavares has been talking about like the climate action plans in each state. 34 states plus Washington, D.C. already have an active one. So we're in the process of like with the new administration coming in, and they're saying, all that's done. We're finished with that. And on the one hand, that's kind of good because it says sovereignty is in the United States, but then what are we going to replace it with? And that's our opportunity right there. And with this geoengineering ban, we're saying first, well, we're gonna go after polluters. We're gonna assert our sovereignty as a state wherever it is, and say, the public has to have input. And again, let's look at this. This is a CIA program. Yeah. They do testing on people all the time. It's not like we have to understand we're in a war. This isn't like all pretty and we're apart from it. It's like we're very much in this war, but our consciousness and our creativity is our ability to find our way out and look for some direction that's positive. So, yeah, the CIA thing is central to this. That's why we're getting sprayed. That's why we're getting everything, all the direction that we're going with the military. And if you look at the history, it just explains itself, But again, we haven't really had the focus on that as a population, as society, to study the history, to understand, because we've been in the process of being broken down deliberately, on purpose, trilateral commission, as you're saying, the New World Order. So we understand the context of what it is. It's like, oh, aha, it makes sense. This does make sense. And when enough of us get the awareness of what our predicament is, then we can start making steps to create unity and build bridges of understanding and connect with other people who are like-minded, and just, connect even beyond language, because that's really where we're at, we all can feel it.
Are you looking at the Trump administration's desire, or at least their statement, that they're going to unhitch from the climate business of the UN as an opportunity to slip in there and get your information or our information heard and looked at? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's part of it. Like, we're working with the folks in Rhode Island that have already introduced legislation, and they're definitely going to be connecting at some point with the new administration. That's my understanding. A lot of these things happen behind the scenes, and but not only them, but in Maryland, the representatives here are very much aware of the geoengineering program and that something is going on. But it's, again, this paralysis of partisan politics. Because what you have is you're looking at this as this, we need to get on this side, and okay, it's very infantile, because you go to one office and they're like, well, we don't know about that. Why don't you call that office? And that's all by design. Yeah.
The bureaucracy is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's, and that's also what getting involved, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever we do, to be the change, that's going to be helpful. I mean, I can't wait for the government or anyone to kind of come up with good ideas. But definitely, I think this new administration, if that's really their thing, then this issue, it depends how they frame it. They could frame this issue because they haven't said anything about it. So that's why I'm more inclined to believe that this is all a show, what's going on. And, the Chinese, put out this, they have a new film out, with Trump as like a Trump character. And, that's some propaganda that we need to be aware of, because they're definitely framing things in a certain way. Because again, we're supposed to be losing our sovereignty to the UN, and it was supposed to be an easy handoff from the Clintons. But hey, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this is a moment where there could be a complete shift. But we're going to have to get rid of these central intelligence agencies as organizing principles of anything. They need to be shut down. They are absolutely illegitimate. It's a war on everyone.
Yeah, it's a rogue organization that has no interest whatsoever in the American people or the world people. It's the CIA has always been an arm, a strong arm of the New World Order. It is regime change. It's selling drugs, weapons, all of that stuff. I mean, this is what they do. So I agree. Now, the thing is, I think what we have to do is, I see a lot of people really going crazy, with Trump's only been in office now, I think, 10 days. So I think a lot of this still has to play out. A lot of it we have to see if it is sincere, if it is genuine. In other words, what this administration is looking to do. And it's not just window dressing to try to appease a growing constituency of people that are looking for a nation state or looking for their freedoms to come back or that type of thing there. So to me, it's a bit of a wait and see. There's a lot of clamoring going on right now, even with people within the truth movement and the alternative research movement, where all of a sudden they become very enlightened pundits and they're just going on and on about this stuff. I really do think we need to give it a little bit of time to see how it plays out. I mean, I'm skeptical by nature, you know what I'm saying? Because for too long, I know how these people get into power, So we'll have to see where he goes with this. The words, as an example, where he says he's going to take the money away from the climate change initiative that the United States was contributing to the United Nations. I mean, on the surface, that's a good thing, right?
Yes, indeed. And if this takes out geoengineering, that would be great. But my concern is that this geoengineering is going to get conveniently hid behind a new space military program. See, that's the element that we have to go after, which is the military element. And again, it's like we can't get away from it. And I just want to read something from the Weather as a Force Multiplier. Just something that just kind of people need to know, because we have to understand that our framework is set, but as civilians, we do have the ability to change it if we show up and weigh in. And what they say in this is, mature over the next 30 years will offer anyone who has the necessary resources the ability to modify weather patterns and their corresponding effects, at least on the local scale. Current demographic, economic, and environmental trends will create global stresses that provide the impetus necessary for many countries or groups to turn this weather modification ability into a capacity. In the United States, weather modification will likely become a part of national security policy with both domestic and international applications. Our government will pursue such a policy depending on its interests at various levels. These levels could include unilateral actions, participation in a security framework such as NATO, membership in an international organization such as the UN, or participation in a coalition. Assuming that in 2025 our national security strategy includes weather modification, its use in our national military strategy will naturally follow. Besides the significant benefits an operational capability would provide, another motivation to pursue weather modification is to deter and counter potential adversaries. basically, what we're looking at is the architecture of weather modification, which was imposed on us. That was written in 1996. So we're looking at decades and, again, looking at the history of this, and I could suggest people go to weathermodification.com. You can find out, or Climate Viewer also has some interesting history. You can find out exactly how far back it goes, along with the patents and the real players in this. And it is our government very much. We have presidents who, Lyndon B. Johnson in 1958 talked about the control. He talked about speaking to Senate Democratic Caucus when he was a senator, before he was even president. They were pushing this 1958. Control of space means control of the world. Space, the masters of infinity, would have the power to control the Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change the tides and raise the level of the sea, to divert the Gulf Stream and change the climate to frigid. This is the ultimate position of total control over the Earth that lies somewhere in outer space. So, yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, that the new administration, are they going to hide this program, the geoengineering program, because it is integral in the military communication systems, especially if you've read Alana Freeland's book, and I'm looking forward to her next book, Space Fence, then you know a little bit about the fact that the military depends on ionizing the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And Sophia Smallstorm, of course, has brought out a lot of information on that. So,
well, I think the other problem, Jolie, is that I'm going to give my perspective on this. The government and the military-industrial complex and other factions of what we think as a cohesive government is not cohesive. So, in other words, what that means is that the president doesn't really control as much as people would think or would like the president to control everything. He does not. And I think the proof of that is the fact that I don't think any president really controls the CIA at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because the CIA is a deep state entity, and it does not have its allegiance to the President of the United States. Now,
exactly.
The president will put a director of CIA in place, but that's window dressing, in my opinion. So what happens is that that person could affect a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if there's something that the CIA is going to do and is hell-bent on doing, they're going to do it with or without the president.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, that's how it works. So when people start complaining that, Trump, any president, is not doing this, not doing that, not, reining this in, not reining that in, it's because we have a very, very fractured apparatus.
Yeah.
It's very fractured, and people have to start thinking in terms of that the president does not control this behemoth which is in place. And I'm talking about the government, I'm talking about the institutions, I'm talking about the media, I'm talking about the military-industrial complex. I mean, we can just see today how all of these entities basically are independent. In other words, they operate as their own entities. They cooperate and participate when they need to, but when there's no need to or they refuse to, they will go off and do their own thing. So this is becoming a very, very complicated issue. And, before you mentioned about the spraying, and they've been spraying forever. And I have a film that I have on my alternative YouTube channel, and it's a 1952 declassified Navy film, which I think it runs about 20 minutes or so. And Jolie, what that film talks about for 20 minutes is the importance of aerosol spraying for biological weapons in warfare. And because you were mentioning Lyndon Johnson back in 1958, this film goes back to 1952, 6 years prior to Johnson in 1958, obviously. So this is something that has been going on for a very long time. They have been spraying us for a very long time. It's well documented throughout history here in the United States, over in the UK. So this really, at this point in time, for anybody who's really even partly awake, this shouldn't be taking them by surprise. And a lot of people will go on and on about things like forced vaccinations and so on. And, my approach and my thinking on that, Jolie, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, is that it doesn't really matter whether you get injected or not, because anything they want to put in your body, they'll just spray it in the air and you'll breathe it in.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely part of the technology and how it's going with this transhumanism.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why, those of us who still do have functioning DNA and biology, it's our job. We're responsible. If we can figure out what's going on and go after the source of this, that's what we have to do. Continue shining a light on it and help people to gain awareness and understanding around these issues and kind of, help bring people out of fear. Because by perpetuating fear, that's what has enabled these programs.
Well, it's fear and apathy.
Yeah, well, you just get stuck.
Yeah. Well, how is it going with the lawmakers? I mean, are they aware of the programs, kind of aware, or do you have to start from square one and say, look, okay, let me take you through this step by step? How does that work?
Well, it depends. What we've been doing is we've been taking a really local approach. So with the representatives that I've met with in California and in Maryland, and especially in Maryland, these delegates do know the issue, and what it is a different kind of approach. What we're doing is trying to gain sponsorship for our written drafted resolution for them to introduce, as it's been introduced in Rhode Island, for us to get a ban at the state level. Now, this is just the procedure of how a law is passed, and so I want to share something with you that is very promising from one of the legislators' offices that I went to in Maryland.
Okay.
And basically, when I went in, there was a couple of gentlemen there, and on the legislative team along with the delegate, and what they told me is, first off, we agree. This is a very serious issue. And then what they told me is now it's going to be the whole thing is going to be how to present this and how the delegate would present this on the floor. Because you have to understand that it's like our peers, our colleagues in the establishment also face the same peer pressure. And so if they bring up something like this, they receive the same amount of rejection that we receive. So basically what we've done is taken the issue into the back door as a health and safety issue. So it frees them up from having any sort of conspiracy to drag with them. So at the last meeting, where we are is they are working on the issue and seeing where it's coming, where it's going in other states. So that's why it's important that we're doing this in different states. And then, they broke down, one of the guys broke down the 38-page document that we have for his delegate, and he provided me with a copy of that. And I just want to share with you, he got it. And, it's just, they're cogs in a wheel, and the wheel turns a certain way. So we can only help try to get them to push it. So what it said was, anyway.
Well, Jolie, before you read it, one second now. Are you saying that the delegates and the reps, they are understanding that this is geoengineering, or are they understanding, or their level of understanding is that this is pollution?
Yeah, their level of understanding is 5th grade. In other words, they don't want to even hear the word geoengineering because it's too complex. It's like, it's science that people, and again, we're all human beings. Just because these people work in these offices and it doesn't make their level of understanding any different than ours.
So, yeah, because the way this would play out is if they came in and said geoengineering, yada, 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 and what's going to happen is the pro-geoengineering people are going to march out, their so-called experts, right?
Yeah, that's already happened, and we've countered it.
Right, but I'm saying that's what's going to happen. It's going to wind up being a tug of war. But if they approach it and say, look, regardless of what it is that you want to do, you think the sun is, shining too brightly on any given day and we have to block it, whatever, here's the real issue, okay? You're spraying pollution, particulates into the atmosphere, which are hazardous to life.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's very good because that changes the whole line of discussion, right? It gets off of why we're doing it, and it shifts it to you have your reasons for doing it, but you're hurting everybody. You're killing people.
Right. It's traction. And the first line of our resolution, Mike, is resolution to require public consent prior to any geoengineering, climate remediation, experiment, or program commencing in or having either an effect or an indirect or a direct effect in the state of, and you pick your state. See, because what I'm trying to do is encourage people, we can do this in every state, because now that the legislation was introduced in Rhode Island, see, we're beyond, is it happening? Is it not happening? Are they doing it? Are they not doing it? No, we have the lab tests. We know they're doing it. What we need is a mechanism to get a law in place. And so that's what we're doing. And so I encourage anyone to call me or email me, Jolie, D818 @gmail.com. And then, of course, you can go to zerogeoengineering.com and find out how to get started in your state. I have met some of the most amazing activists, and we're just getting started, because that's the way this is going to bubble up into what we need in terms of public perception and public awareness, having a negative association with geoengineering, like you just said. We don't need, like, the rabbit hole runs deep, but to stop this, all we need to do is exactly like you said, connect this issue with air pollution. That's it. We're done. And then those of us who have the stomach for it and who know where to go to shut this thing down, we'll all just continue doing what we're doing, but we got to get in the right direction and try to take this thing down. And we don't need any more terms, because the delegates that I talked to, I mean, this is it's already complicated enough. What they need is a 5th grade version. They need tons of people calling their office and supporting them and saying, look, we want a geoengineering bill now, today. There's no excuse for it. And then we have recent documents from Carnegie from a couple of days ago and from the Chinese who are doing weather modification. So again, it is affecting everybody. And in a free society, we have to have public consent and public input in every single thing that's happening that affects us. End of story.
So Maryland, then, it would put it through their state legislature?
Every state, yeah. Every state would. So where we are is we've talked to several delegates, and this is how it happens. Then they go and they discuss it. They know it's an important issue. But the way things work here, I went to talk to the Department of the Environment last April, and basically at the end of the day, I heard the same thing. It was like, we agree with you, but the way this works is you need a bill. If I had something to sign, then I could take some sort of action. And so that's the ineptitude of this system defined. Because if I have to run in circles and find the right person to get this signature and get a bill, and so that's what I've been doing, we've been doing the hoop jumping, but so that's how it works. So that's why we're trying to encourage people to do this. We're also doing this in other countries. Let's see, we have people taking action in Canada, Austria, the UK, there's several, Germany, there's several places where activists are getting busy and they're working on the same sort of formula to, just make sure that we get some grassroots. And again, we're addressing the geoengineering, which is also addressing these towers. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that, because that's another reason that we're very specific with this term, because we can nail in a court of law geoengineering 7 days a week, 24/7. And we have the documents to prove what it is. We have the, if people go and you can just go to Roboc.
I'll put all these links in the show notes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's benefits, risks, and costs of geoengineering, and this was in 2009. And on one of the pictures, there's pictures of towers. And what it says underneath them is could be used for stratospheric geoengineering. That's part of the description. So, it's all there.
So you're talking about the towers that everybody thinks are cell phone towers that pop up every other day?
Exactly. Exactly.
Remember I said to you the last time we spoke offline that I've never actually seen one being built?
Hmm.
They just appear overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mortifying. There's nothing good about these towers. And again, see, we have to look at the bigger 911. This whole thing, this breakdown, this construction of planetary breakdown and climate change is being orchestrated by the Carnegie, by the Bill Gates, by every billionaire that is trying to sidestep accountability and has bought the media to be able to have this, curtain to hide behind. And now that curtain, of course, is like sort of escaping them because everybody has an opinion in an iPhone now, the story's changing. So I'm actually optimistic. I think that the main thing about the new administration and where we are now is that people just have to engage. Find your issue, whatever it is. Hopefully it's geoengineering, but whatever it is, and show up for that issue instead of fighting against what you don't want. Because again, as we know, with intention, whatever you focus your awareness on is going to grow.
Right.
So if it's an anger, if it's against, if it's division, you're just going to create more of that. And that's sort of like the web that we're woven into. But at the same time, if we take care of ourselves, if we center ourselves in our own truth, in love, and in our own awareness, the answers will come to us. And so, and the steps will be shown to us. So yeah, that's with love. We can't do anything as a movement with fear or telling, I've heard a lot of, oh, those people this and these people that, but that's just another division tactic and it's not our fault. It's just, that's what we've been programmed with. So we have to reprogram ourselves to question, does this person really deserve the wrath of my hatred?
Yeah. So what you're saying is they have to have a plan and proactive plan, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, don't focus on stopping something. I don't mean like we want it to stop, but you're complaining about the fact that they're doing it versus putting an action plan together and saying, okay, this is what we need to pursue. This is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to push. Because I agree. I think what a lot of people are doing, and not just with geoengineering, but with any type of conspiracy that's out there, and I hate to even call it a conspiracy because we know what's happening.
It's science. Yeah, it's
science, right? Yeah. Exactly. So people are focusing on trying to tackle the bad guys, but you also have to have a plan.
Yes.
As like an end state. What is it that you're looking for? Yes. What is it that you want? What is the alternative? And why should it be an alternative? So I think that that's a very good approach that you're taking.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I'm really under the firm belief that, we have every possibility to turn it around, but it's the energy that we are going to bring to it. And I'm hoping that we can do a zero fracking and a zero GMO. Because, again, these are all part of the same problem.
Well, fracking is a good one because here in North Carolina, there's constant pushback with fracking. And what happens is the public will get extremely upset. They have public hearings. And so what they do is they essentially push it off for a little bit, and then they revisit it. And this is the tactic that they have. What they'll do is they continue to bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. It's a game of wearing the public out.
Right.
This is what they do. We see it even at the federal level where you think you won a battle, especially when all of the surveillance stuff was hot and heavy going back a couple of years ago. We would see that what they would do is they would just table it for a few months, and then the initiative or the bill would resurrect, and usually under a different name.
Right.
They would call it something different. And it's very, folks, if you just think about that for a second, think about that. It's so underhanded. How could that possibly be in the best interest of you and the public if the people get together, they step up and say, we don't want this to happen, the will of the people, then they basically tuck it away in their top left-hand drawer and then they brush it off.
Right.
A few months later, essentially the exact same initiative or the exact same law or whatever it is that they want to put in place. But, they masquerade it. They dress it up in a different name in order to dupe the public. That's what they're in the business of doing, is duping the public.
Yeah,
Very, very sad.
that's well said. The role of deception,
Yep.
in public perception and manufacturing the public perception. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that that's the center of gravity, but it really is. And that's why, as civilians, recognize that we're in a theater, a war
Yeah,
theater.
that's right.
And, I just wanted to go back to the CIA director, Brennan, the last one, and, just so people can know, and many people have probably seen the YouTube of it, but he starts talking about stratospheric geoengineering, and he says technology is often referred to collectively as geoengineering that potentially would help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat.
What's interesting is none of that is supposed to be happening.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And he's talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. So that lie is like the big lie that's been going for decades now, trying to, get us all to believe in climate change and global warming when it was geoengineering induced climate change.
Yeah.
Warming. So that's the thing to really we've gotten away from our science. So hopefully we'll get back into our science. But, I think that should concern people when the CIA director is pushing aerosol injection. And he says stratosphere, but let's be honest, that it's going on in the troposphere, and that's from the ground up where we can see it.
Yeah.
And, and of course, the psyop of this has been so masterfully interwoven, because of the conspiratorial nature. And I wanted to kind of point out how that got written into the very documentation of the people that are pushing these programs and how they created the conspiracy. And then that has been kind of the context of all the dialogue, until now. A lot of people have probably seen this. It's called Climate Intervention, Planned Weather Modification. And it was published in 2015. And weather modification, which could also be called weather intervention, is the intentional alteration of the composition, behavior, or dynamics of the atmosphere occurring over a specific area and time period to accomplish a particular goal. So basically, they're messing with the weather without anyone's permission. And since it's military programs, they just sidestep regulations. But written into that, this is it's called climate intervention. If you go to Zero Geoengineering under the reference section and just look up climate intervention, you'll pull this up. And what they do is they make it a point at the end of the article, at the end of the book, they go through and they make sure to frame the chemtrail conspiracy theories. And what they say is when aircraft travel through the upper troposphere, the water vapor emitted in the engine exhaust can condense on other exhaust particles to form cirrus clouds. The results are the familiar contrails that can be seen in the upper troposphere trailing behind the generating aircraft. Chemtrail conspiracy believers speculate that contrails are formed by deliberate chemical releases of the purposes of albedo modification, psychological manipulation, population control, weather modification, or biological or chemical warfare, and are the cause of respiratory and other illnesses. Although this conspiracy has been repeatedly debunked, which has shown that the sometimes persistent high-altitude contrails are simply normal water-based condensation trails from the exhausts of engines of high-flying aircraft under certain atmospheric conditions in which the crystals are supercooled droplets are very slow to evaporate. This myth persists. Relevant to the topic of this report, and then they state some stuff. But so that's how they do it. Just very, very clearly at the, buried into the text. And then so that way that formulates the response for all of our, for anyone in office. They say, oh, well, according to this latest science, chemtrails are just a conspiracy. And so that's been the use of deception and the use of psychological operations with this. Because again, this is a military program. And if people knew that they were dumping chemicals in the air, people would be pissed off about it and do something about it.
What's interesting is I did an interview with Malcolm Scott, who was a New Zealand geoengineering activist back in, I guess it was July of last year. And there was a document that he received from the New Zealand government that essentially said the same thing. In other words, he wasn't supposed to see it. They sent it to him accidentally. It was stating, this is what the anti-geoengineering conspiracy group believes this is. So basically what they were doing was, like you said, they were framing the argument so that if we get approached, or if you get approached with this type of debate or this type of argument about what they believe is going on, you'll be equipped to be able to respond or retort, to be able to address that, or at least have a heads up that you may receive that question. The other thing that gets me, Jolie, about what you just read is that it appears to me that they spend an incredible amount of time trying to understand, and they do understand, what our position is. Considering that they want to call us a bunch of conspirators on any given day, they sure do have the conspirator talking points down, which says to me that they're listening very closely.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the artful, skillful use of deception. And we have to remember, these people are experts at it, experts at lying, experts at framing, experts at understanding the psychology behind using certain language. So it's created an enormous, gap in even our own movement because, you have this use of language that's a trigger. It's a knee-jerk reactionary trigger. And then people are off arguing. And then, for me, I'm like, myopic. How are we going to get a law to stop this aerosol pollution, whatever it is? Because if the term is not court admissible, here's the other thing I'll say about that. Because Dennis Kucinich in 2000 introduced legislation, and it was thrown out because of the word chemtrail is not court admissible.
Yeah, he listed it as an exotic weapon, I believe.
Yeah, and I love Dennis Kucinich, and I loved him even more once I found out about that. But even Clifford Carnicom was the one who told me about the court admissibility issue and why it's important as activists to understand this, because at the end of the day, it's not just the aerosols. We need to take down these towers. We need to take down, Agenda 21. We need to take down your Carnegie and the Bill Gates and all these people who are violating us, So what's our mechanism? What's our plan? And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about this ban, So it's definitely a way, but, there's a lot of factors that we have to understand that this technology is already in use. It's something that it's a war of science on nature. And again, those of us that have the understanding, the capacity, and the ability to do so should fight this, with every ounce of our being and flip it so that we can create something beautiful. Because on the other hand, once this machine disappears, okay, got rid of that. Well, then what are we going to do? And so, in addressing the CO2 issue, if there even was one, which there isn't, but if there was, what we would do is just start industrializing organic farming. We have to clean up and regenerate the soil, but that's the way, because that would take care of any CO2 problem if there even was. But again, the idea of adding pollution to the atmosphere, which is what geoengineering is an absolute violation and a very sad statement in the last 8 years that we've watched our friends and neighbors not believe their own observation and allow this pollution to just rain down on us. So,
well, what's interesting too is that they talk about climate change and they show up at these climate conferences with all of their data and their charts and so on, but they never, ever talk about the fact that the weird weather that we experience, and believe me, we're getting weird weather in North Carolina on any given day, is due to the fact that they are screwing with the atmosphere, with the aerosols.
Yep.
They never talk about that. They never talk about how the spraying is contributing to temperature shifts 20 degrees from one day to the other. It's amazing to me. Now, Jolie, just to kind of get some of the audience acclimated, I'm sure most that are listening to this know that in these aerosols, that the three major particulates that are found are aluminum, strontium, and barium. My question is, because I get asked this question, well, what proof do we have that that stuff is really in there? And if it is in there, how bad is it?
Yeah, I mean, because that's a good question, and people ask me that too. And the thing is that you have to understand that the water in the rain or the snow is an accurate measure of what's in the air, period. So whatever's in there is going to be in the rain or the snow, and I guarantee that there's no one listening that has any barium, strontium, or aluminum in that form laying around, in the kitchen. So that's how I know for sure that, if the geoengineering wasn't happening, and it is called a geoengineering test. If you check out basiclab.com, there's a geoengineering test. Now, if it wasn't happening, it wouldn't be in your rain. So that's my, that's my response. And it shouldn't be in the rain. It should be zero. There's metals in the rain. Again, this is a military program, and they have not had to answer or provide any accountability for dumping stuff in the atmosphere. And we know they are for sure, because I have another important document from 1998 that was commissioned by Harry Reid from Nevada, and it was DOD management issues related to chaff. And chaff are these tiny particles, tiny fibers that are dumped out, and it's been in use for over 50 years at the time in 1998. But what they say about air quality and how they know that this violates air quality issues is on page 6. They say the air quality issues addressed in the report include the potential for 1, non-compliance with national air quality standards due to the release of significant quantities of particulates, 2, release of hazardous air pollutant emissions, and 3, visibility impairment. Okay, so they know this. This is 1998. And we don't even, they're doing the weather modification stuff with some of those aerosols, but then some of these aerosols are military communications components and cyber warfare and all that. And then the other biological issues that they address is that, the report addresses the potential of biological effects of chaff on wildlife due to inhalation, ingestion, and direct contact, as well as the effects of chaff on vegetation and aquatic life of chaff decomposing in soil or water. That's page 7 of this environmental protection DOD management issues related to chaff. And you can find that it's on Geoengineering in the reference section. So, yeah, it's military, and that's who we have to confront on this. So, yeah, I think the time is definitely now.
Now, the testing that you have or that your team has, is it mostly environmental, like water, soil samples, or are there also blood samples from humans that have been tested and they see their, the aluminum levels in their blood or the barium in their blood over the top?
Yeah, we have a couple of hair and blood samples. One from I think his son is, I think maybe 8. Maybe even younger, but there was a very high level of aluminum here in Maryland. And then one of our activists in California, his son also had a significant amount of aluminum, barium in the hair. I mean, it's all over the place. Of course, we're going to absorb this stuff.
Well, what about the water testing as an example? Could you give an example of how over the top that the aluminum levels are?
Yeah, for example, we got a 1480 aluminum in New York, in Queens, New York.
What does 1480 mean, so the audience is aware?
That means parts per million.
Parts per million, okay.
And I believe that, it should be zero. We found aluminum, barium, strontium, and we've been also testing for sulfur dioxide, which we've been finding as well. And yeah, Francis Mangels is really the go-to. in terms of if you want your test, he'll give you an explanation and breakdown. He's really wonderful, and we've sent a lot of tests over there to kind of get deciphered and figure out what it is. But in this New York test, we got 1480 aluminum, 63 barium, 15 strontium, and 722 sulfur.
And that came from what? Water, soil?
That was from water, from the rain. And I want to make this.
And there should be what? 0?
There shouldn't be any in it.
Okay.
So this is the rain. See, this is why we don't test for soil or anything except for the precipitation.
Okay, got it.
Because precipitation is the only accurate measure of what's in the air.
Okay.
And that's why I don't feel like we have to go chasing any airplanes at this point. Look, we have laws that protect us, the air quality, the Clean Air Act. I mean, we already have strong laws that prohibit sulfur dioxide, for example, but why aren't they being applied? And that's why we're bringing the ban to the table, because it's just going to help connect dots in this, situation that's pretty uphill. But
now, do you have to explain to the legislatures or the delegates when you see them, Jolie, do you have to explain to them as an example, this is why aluminum shouldn't be in your body? I mean, do you have to explain to them the effects of aluminum? No,
I don't. Here's the thing, when you get a meeting with these people, what we're trying to do is get them to sponsor this health and safety bill. And so we have to bring our own frame. And so when I have had these meetings, what I've learned is that they need less information. They need less of the science. So here we are, I'm reading through every possible article and document and but that's not what they need. They need the 5th grade breakdown at this point that they can sell this and bring it on the House floor and get behind the bill and fight for it. And for example, in Maryland, they just fought for and passed a bill to protect the bees with some pesticide legislation. And that's why we do have, it could happen. It's a bit of a dance because you're, trying to help these people see what geoengineering is when they've been told it's not really a thing, but now they know it's a thing. We have the documentation. We have Rhode Island they've already introduced it. And it's just like we're at the very beginning stages and picking up steam, like where the GMO movement was, before people really had the understanding of what's, this has to do with my food and why should I have to eat organic? It's more expensive. And, but we're at that beginning stage of, focused public awareness to take down geoengineering now. So,
well, that's a good analogy because with the GMO, so many people became aware of GMO food and the potential health hazards, and quite frankly, you should be eating real food, which is organic food. And there was all this debate going on about GMO labeling, and there were so many people that were just wringing their hands over the fact that, that labeling wasn't taking place, and Monsanto was circumventing and, getting their lobbyists into the Congress, and things weren't happening. And I was telling folks, look, all you need to do is just stop buying their shit. And if you buy the organic food, then what'll happen is, that's the only thing they understand. They understand the money, right? So they understand if there's no demand for their products, then they're going to change something. But as long as there's complaining, but you're still buying their stuff, then what's going to happen is you're still going to see GMO. So the point I'm trying to make here is, I know I'm going off on a little bit on a tangent, is that people's focus moved to eating the right foods, moving in the proper direction. And when that happened, more and more people now are spending their money on organic food, and this is forcing the GMO food makers to have to completely rethink their business model. And they have to make changes. They're making changes now that they had refused to make before the advent of people actually shifting over and eating more organic food.
Yeah,
right. So,
exactly.
Right. So that's the same thing with the geoengineering is that as long as you keep jabbering with them or trying to debate with them and trying to debunk them and all that stuff, I'm not saying that you shouldn't you have to understand the process. You have to understand what's going on. but you have to move away from the tit for tat, and you have to, it's what we were talking about before, you have to get to an action plan.
Exactly.
You have to get to an end state. What's the goal line look like here? Well, the goal line is that they don't spray. Yes, but the thing is, how are you going to get there?
Exactly. Exactly. You have to have it articulated. You have to have a plan. And this is the war. I mean, the GMO thing is geoengineering. It's the same engineering paradigm at war. It's like an invasive, it's an intervention, it's everything about a war just directed into the climate. And, and that's been introduced into our food. I mean, so the nanotechnology introduced, I mean, it's a horrendous violation, and in a free society. But that's, imagine what it will be like when we can see the sun and feel the sun.
I know.
Imagine going out and taking a big breath of fresh air.
When I go outside and I see, they spray a lot here in North Carolina, Jolie, but when they don't spray, every once in a while we get a break and the sky is blue. I feel good.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not seeing that shit, lining the sky from horizon to horizon. The sky is blue, and I think to myself, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's an energetic thing, and as, beings of energy, we're affected by the frequencies and the aerosols, and, we're going to be part of this whole pollution soup. But yeah, you can definitely feel the difference, and it's so wonderful, and worth fighting for. So yeah, every single day, 24/7.
Yeah, and this is good work that you're doing, and I know it's hard work. It's very, very hard. So I tip my hat to you and everybody else who's engaged in this process, because this is not easy. This is not easy. This is very, very hard work, because you've got to pull all of this together. Then you've got to go speak to people who really don't know anything about it for the most part when you get there. You have to give them a see-spot run understanding of what's going on here. And then you really have to kind of lead them to the point where something could happen. This is just not easy.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going against the tide and then trying to change it.
But you are seeing progress.
Oh, yeah, I want to read you something from the office, from the Maryland office that we visited. And after the meeting, this guy was amazing. He crunched down, 38 pages of our document into a concise, brief 1 page for his delegate. And at the heart of it, it says, geoengineering can be viewed as pollution, so we should monitor air quality to ensure that geoengineering is not implemented without public participation, consent, and oversight. So I left the office with that. I didn't read it before I left because I was busy with my own papers. But that is what we're going for, because what we're doing is we're planting this issue into every office that we can. And then we need to build public support. So when you call, it's very valuable. And you say, I want a ban on geoengineering. That's all you have to say these days. You can call your local rep. And if you want to get more involved, again, I encourage people to call me, because I'm a dog walker. So I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy, it doesn't matter if it's in Congress or what on the phone or, at the store. And so, just give me a call if you're ready to take this avenue. And if, it requires that, you get dressed up in a suit or, something like that, and, take your documents in, which will include your lab tests, and just put it on the desk there and let them know you want to talk about this. This is a big issue for you, and you expect that they're going to be supporting your bill to stop geoengineering. And this is how we get groundswell from the grassroots.
How do you get past somebody who believes that it's not happening because the geoengineering that's taking place is a program of denial? So how do you get past that?
Yeah.
How do you say, hey, look, the geoengineering, it's with the aerosols coming out of the planes, it's pollutants, and so on and so forth, and they turn around and say, well, that's just water vapor? That's
a really good question. What we're doing in terms of seeking sponsorship for our bills, you'll call up and you'll say, good afternoon or good morning. I'd like to speak with the person in the office who's handling the environmental issues, the climate issues, and they'll say, okay, it's so and so, and they put you through to them, or maybe not. but they'll say, well, it's this person, here's their email, and you just find out, does anyone in the office handle geoengineering? And that would be, so then you have a contact, because it's not a matter of if it's happening. If it's not, we just got the thing from Carnegie the other day and their initiative. And, this is the thing. We're connecting the dots for these people because it's been outside the context of state governance. And so we're getting steamrolled from the top down. And that's why when we just show up with our demands and the mechanism for it, which is this ban, then we're showing up with something that we actually have some credibility and something that they can use. And so, yeah, when people, I haven't had that happen to me recently, because now I have the document. There is no discussion anymore. Like I said, we're past the point. If you're still engaging and arguing and it's happening, it's not happening, that's just because, now is the point where we have to try to explain the science to people. And we're like 30 years ahead, 20, 30 years ahead of people's comprehension and ability to assess what's going on and then understand the nature and the outcome if we allow this to progress further. So again, it's like stopping the war, which we haven't been very good at in the United States. People around the world have seen the results of CIA operations, but in the last 8 years, we got a good dose of it with the Obama administration, with the CIA operations, with this geoengineering in our country. And we were, psyoped, and EMF'd. And, so again, it's something that we can do something about, but to be able to grab the perspective and then have the plan. And that's what we're just trying to do, provide people with some way. It's not the only way. Again, like the education and visibility at some of these conferences, here's a suggestion for people. There's big climate marches coming up. You can go down there and print out some flyers and show up with geoengineering information and help educate some of these folks and say, yeah, let's co-opt this. Let's infiltrate this climate march thing, because that's just Carnegie and Bill Gates, and get in there and talk to some people and tell them, do you know about geoengineering? Do you know how that's affected the climate in the last 70 years? Chances are they don't know. And rather than being mad at them, just help to engage them, give them the zero geoengineering, info, and so that they can find some, credible information. And beyond that, what to do, because once you go to a march, so what? Then what are you going to do the next day? I mean, it's important to get together, and that's important, just the camaraderie. I mean, I love going to marches. I've been to, tons of them, because you're there with the good people, and you have to have a strategy. There has to be an action plan. There has to be a next step, so you don't incapacitate people and overwhelm them, and they're just like, oh, forget it. Let's just go to lunch. Too much for me. I need to go watch a movie,
Well, for a lot of people, the march is psychological appeasement. They feel like they stepped out, they did something, and then they go right back, the next day to going about their business and doing whatever. It's kind of like, well, I did something, so now, see, it's a mentality that believes that somebody else is going to do the work for them. Somebody else is going to pick up the ball. Somebody else is going to run down the track with the baton. And somebody else is going to cross over the goal line, and they don't think that they really have to actively participate for that to happen. And they couldn't be more wrong.
Their participation is essential. Everyone's participation is essential. And that's how we're going to win this thing, because we're going to bring our energy and our intentions and our direction for a better world. And there's nothing that can stop that if we can organize and just kind of sidestep all of this division that's being orchestrated. Because again, there is orchestrated division, not only in our movement, but in a lot of them. And, that's your Soros factor, very much at work creating chaos and division. And so I think a lot of our job as people of faith and, people that care, to just try to build bridges of understanding and unity with each other, rather than look for, what this person doesn't get, or the problem with that person. Because again, I mean, it's all meant to distract unity. And they're bringing their plan for a new world order, but we can just as easily and instantaneously, with the shift of perception, bring about something totally different.
Yeah. Now, you talked about, division, and you mentioned Soros, but even at a more grassroots level, right? There's subversion and controlled opposition. I mean, maybe we could talk about that a little bit without getting into names. You and I talked about this a little bit the other day when we just had a conversation, but this is so important to the globalists. This is so important to the whole New World Order apparatus that there are people that are engaged at a grassroots level, or they are appearing to be grassroots, who really at the end of the day have a different agenda than those who are trying to eradicate the spraying, right?
Exactly. Yeah, their methods are to infiltrate these groups. And a lot of times what will happen, you'll have these big groups getting together. And I've seen it happen in, lots of different genres, not just the geoengineering, but the anti-war and the Guantanamo and different groups. And we saw co-option with the Code Pink. Because Soros bought this pink idea, co-opted it like the other color revolutions, took out the activism, and boom. Then you had a whole group that showed up, but didn't really have a plan or any real, so that's the beauty of the PSYOP. So yeah, I think we always have to be looking for ways to counter that. And one of the things that has been really great, in spite of the, uphillness of this movement and, this issue, is meeting with people and talking with people from around the world that care about this and are working with it also. And so I think that the way we counter this is just finding your group, finding your people, and, getting on the phone or, going and meeting with people in small groups, and then making plans to do things in small groups where you can't be infiltrated. And then this is a way to flip the tactics on them, because public perception is what they're after. That's why they're in a fight with the fake news. That's why Manning, Snowden, Assange, they do not want the truth to get out, and they don't want people to understand the world around them and how to extract ourselves from it and create a beautiful and free world. So yeah, I think that's one idea, just to get together and just start talking about this with other people, because that's the only reason I got going, is because just talking with people from around the world and then getting ideas, and we, then that's how Zero Geoengineering came about. That's how Worldwide Civilian Action Team came about. It's just from talking to, just amazing people, and then that gives you a little bit of juice to get going.
Well, Jolie, what are some of the tactics of the infiltrators? What types of things do they do? Do they say to undermine the effort? Your experience.
Okay, well, yeah, basically what I found out recently, because I've been so active in trying to get this legislation passed, that I saw an activist on the talk show circuit. And yeah, I'm trying to stay away from naming names because.
But what was it that they were doing?
But basically, what they did was they got on to a program, and they said, a lot of what they said was right on cue, right on target. They might have even they wrote a book which I had read, and I was like, oh, okay, well, but then he was like, well, everybody, I would encourage everybody to go, investigate chemtrails. And I thought, wow, well, when you investigate chemtrails, it just takes you to a conspiracy theory, and it's not really giving you any action plan of what you can do. It's kind of just overwhelming people and taking them on a wild goose chase.
So what you're saying is people who are unaware would go then Google chemtrails, and they'd wind up in Wikipedia, and it would say, it's a conspiracy.
Yeah, nothing to worry about. Just go back to sleep. These people who are talking about it are obviously chemtrail conspiracy theorists, right? As written into their documentation. And boom, it's the frame. There's the frame. Very easy to use. You're dismissed. Goodbye. And that's how it works. And that's how that's the nature of the PSYOP. So when I saw this person who has been in the movement for so long and stuff, and directing people, I thought, my goodness. And then the person said, well, I'm from a town that was close to where I'm from, in California. And so I said, well, wow, that is very interesting, because I haven't seen anyone working on legislation from my town but me. So I did a little bit of calling from some of my friends, and I found out that this person had actually, I'm going to read you a note from this person that I just kind of checked in with, because if I wasn't from this area, I never would have found this out. But this guy, the note says, yeah, we had a group that was working on geoengineering with someone big in the geoengineering movement, and we felt that this person that came in was an infiltrator. And this person approached one of the city council members, and so the council member put him on the agenda, even though he wasn't from our town.
So he wasn't even from that town.
He wasn't even from that town. and I should know, because I was there for like 23 years, and my friends were working on this issue before I even knew about it. This was several years ago that this happened. So it was an accident that I even found out about this. But then once I found out, I said, oh my goodness, this guy's going around the talk circuit, and he actually was the one that had this derailed, because what happened was, she said it was horrible. It was all about chemtrails. After months of work they had done, they made a decision as a small group not to use the word chemtrails, and they were going to use the word geoengineering in their legislation. And that's, what they had all agreed with. And they were working on a resolution. And what happened was, this guy undercut. He gave an interview to a local paper. It was a previously unheard of reporter, and it was referencing chemtrails throughout. And then the person that we were working with, that was, kind of a heavy hitter, walked away and said that this person was an infiltrator. And then the entire city council left. They had the support of the council before this happened. So they would have gotten legislation for geoengineering, Mike. It was happening already. But this guy came in, he got into the meeting, he went and did an interview on his own, and then boom, all credibility lost. My friends were like heckled and ridiculed for months and months after working for months and months trying to get the legislation together. So that's just something, going forward and trying to get a law, because again, I'm pretty myopic in that's just the main goal.
Has the word gotten around about this person so that everybody else has a heads up?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have reached out to several people that I know in the community to try to let them know. And when I see if I see any more sharing of this, because again, it's like, what I'm trying to be conscious of is that this is an attempt to break up our movement, to splinter us, I don't care what language people use, I really don't, that I want to get a law to stop these programs. So that's my focus. But yeah, this is how it's been used. This is how language and psychological operations have been used on us, to prevent us from taking any action.
So basically what he's doing is he's tying the hands of the activists who are trying to get the laws passed by going in and essentially presenting trigger words.
Right. Because people know there's a lot of people in our movement. Awesome. And, you just understand. It's like when you go to church, you don't cuss in church. So the same thing, if we're going to get a law on geoengineering, we got to get the court admissible terms. I didn't make up the rules. It's like, if you're going into a basketball game, the rules are the rules. If you're going to get in the game, it's already happening. You just better get in there and see if you can make anything happen.
Well, the interesting thing, too, is that this person really went about it on their own. So they did not work as a team.
Right.
They didn't collaborate. They didn't hunker down with other activists and say, okay, so what's the strategy?
Right.
How is it we're going to present this? They just went in, did what they had to do, basically create the damage and walked out.
Exactly.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, that's why folks really have to be careful about who they are connected to and who they're working with. And sometimes it's not easy. It's really not easy. Some of these folks that are controlled opposition, they are there because they're very good at what they do, at being controlled opposition. But you have to pick up on the things like you guys picked up on, the fact that throwing the word chemtrail all over the place, well, that's a red flag right there.
Yeah, if you're saying that you're really familiar and you've done all the research and well, then then you've obviously read the documents which write their alibi right into it. Yeah, so that was, you do have to be careful. And I think basically what I decided was, is I'm just going to go on offense here and see who will show up. And so there's a lot of people who have and are, have been making calls, tons of people. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. When you call up, if you use the chemtrail word, you're on a list already. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way that the rules are designed right now. And it's a psyop. So there's nothing fair about it. It's the use of deception in policy making. And again, because since we have the Central Intelligence Agency, has been so at the forefront of creating foreign and domestic policy, that's again what we're going to confront. But in the meantime, we have a plan, and it's to ban geoengineering in the United States and worldwide. And I know that we can do it. It's just, and what we're going to be able to do is not only take down geoengineering, but take down these towers. We can grab a hold of the GMOs. We can grab a hold of this science paradigm and nail it down. We have to. It's outrageous and it's a war. And yet we got to get better at shutting it down.
Now, Jolie, are there folks that you would like to mention on the show that are in this with you, good people that are working really hard like yourself that you want to give a shout out to?
Oh, yeah. There's tons of people I'm working with. And, in fact, we just had a really good meeting last night. But, yeah, I want to say give a shout out to my friends in New York, Carla and Maheen and Michelle and Robin and Sharon and Kathy and Rob. I'm going to leave people out, Robin and Annette. We got some people just really showing up in their states and just leading the way. And just, of course, just a thank you to everyone that has been working on this. Because of all the hard work, and it's just been incredible. This word, the geoengineering word, is like a household name almost. So I have to say thank you to everyone, and you, Mike, for bringing so much good energy and just reason and, intellectual reflection. And it's just been, I listen to a lot of your shows, so it's kind of funny to be talking to you, but,
Well, we're friends, and I appreciate that, Jolie, but I'm not doing anything near what you guys are doing. You are really doing a lot of heavy lifting. You really are. I mean, I know, I've been involved in other things in my life, and I know what it's like to essentially to be carrying this stuff on your shoulders and trying to move the ball forward. And it's lonely. It's not like you have an army of people behind you. You mentioned the names of some folks, good folks that are working with you and helping you, but it's not an army of people.
Not yet. Well, it starts with a few.
Right.
I ran for president, and that was.
I know. I can't believe you lost.
And oh yeah, could you believe I lost that thing? But anyway, yeah, I was kind of busy trying to stop geoengineering at the time. But that's what, that's really it, because I was trying to find someone that was going to nail down the issues that we have. And, and this science, this war of science and the war in general. So, I'm just going to keep plugging away. And like I said, it was kind of lonely for a while, but, all the awesome people that have showed up, and continue to show up just gives me a lot of hope. And, like I said, I'm totally confident that we can shut this thing down. All we got to do is get everybody to, get on their iPhone and make a call to their rep and say, look, we want a ban on geoengineering.
Yeah, get involved. Now, Jolie, are there any connection points that you'd like to talk about where people can learn more about your work or perhaps even learn more about geoengineering?
Sure, yeah. Go to zerogeoengineering.com and to the Take Action. And we're trying to link up with lots of different people that and create a context of community. So definitely if you have some actions to share, please get a hold of me at Zero Geoengineering, and I'll put your actions up there. We're working with activists around the world right now, and it's awesome. And so we're going to be working on some countries, different countries. We're calling it a trilateral action. So we're going to get some different countries involved in taking an action together, and then like doing these little things like getting organized to show up at some of these geoengineering conferences with some visible geoengineering handouts, geoengineering stuff, and just getting ourselves at some of these places where in 2017 they're already on the calendar. Yeah, and then on the site I link up with several places, because there's just a lot of people that are doing some great work. Yeah.
If you send me all those links.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Send them to me in an email, and I'll make sure they make them into the show notes, and so folks can click on them and go where you'd like them to go.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. And Rosalind Peterson is a major inspiration. I would go to agriculturedefensecoalition.org to find out more, because she has so much comprehensive information on there. And but I don't think there's anyone besides her and Alexander May Hunter who have put together legislation like this. So yeah, definitely go to her site. Actually, Alfred Lamar Weber did some legislation. He did the Kucinich legislation. So there has been a few people. So yeah, we're just trying to narrow that down and give people a place to find that at Zero Geoengineering. So go to the reference section and the articles. We're trying to keep updated with those so people can have something, to say when they call people, and for exactly the reason, oh, that's not really happening, da-da-da, it's just water vapor. Well, no, it's actually geoengineering. And then, we're just trying to put a mountain of information there for people to just dig through and find what they need, hopefully.
Okay, excellent. Well, Jolie, as you know, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, and we should not wait almost a year for you to come back on the show. You know what it is? It's because we're friends on Facebook, so I see everything you're posting. So it's not like I feel like we're like disconnected.
Right.
And but with the work that you're doing, we should probably have you come back maybe within the next 5 or 6 months or so, just to give an update.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, I really appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important stuff, and it's important that everybody hear that there's actual real work getting done where you're trying to implement laws to really make this happen versus, just continuing to just talk about it, which is what a lot of people do. There's nothing wrong talking about it, I'm just saying, but at some point you have to stop talking and you have to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I completely agree. That's the stage we're in now.
So, all right, well, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And I want you to, here's my recommendation. I want you to play guitar more.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yes.
For the audience, so you know that Jolie is a great guitar player and a musician, and you should send me one of your songs and I'll tack it on to the end of the show. How about that?
Oh, that would be awesome. I forgot about that. Yeah, in my other life, I was a musician.
That's exactly right. All right, Jolie, we'll catch up. I'll have the show out in about, give me about 10 days or so. I got to get through some work stuff, and then I'll send you the link.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All righty.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wisdom of the ages, are you glistening? The NSA is listening to everything. Nothing in your sights unseen, just everlasting love unchanged, reflecting into everything. The soul remains uplifted, and the truth is leaking out. Guantanamo down. Shut the prisons and the walls so we can turn this world around for good. The truth is leaking out. The truth is leaking in. The truth is leaking. The truth is leaking. Why is the public the enemy? Chelsea Manning should be free. Information made us wise. Puts every president on trial. Hey, kings and queens. Here's to the death of taxes. We miss your liberty. Gonna get you out of mass incarceration. The TSA, they wanna touch you. They wanna touch you. They wanna touch you. They got your number, but the truth is leaking. They got your number, but the truth is leaking. They got your number, but the truth is leaking. The truth is leaking. In a free society, everybody, yeah, everybody is free. Every nation, every child belongs to Mother Nature from the inside. From the inside.
And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.
Hey brother, hey sister, hey mister, let's be one. We are one. No more war. Close that door. Let's do more. Let's be one. We are one. No more time for lies and deceit. Get out of line and up on your feet. Yeah, let's be one. We are one. Let's be one. We are one. Take a stand. Do you understand? Yes, we can. Let's be one. We are one. Let's make change, not rearrange. It might seem strange.